The velvet curtains of the grand ballroom didn't just muffle the sound of the string quartet, they hid a predator. Most people see a wedding as a celebration of love, but for my family, it was a high-stakes auction. And I was the one on the block. My name is Jade. I'm 27, a senior architectural designer in Chicago. And for the last 5 years, I've been the black sheep because I dared to be successful without my parents' permission. But as I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, I didn't realize that by the end of the night, my life wouldn't just change, it would explode. Imagine this. You're standing on a stage in front of 300 people. The mayor is there. The city's top developers are there. Your sister Chloe is glowing in a Vera Wang gown. Then, your mother leans in, not to whisper a compliment, but to shove a legal folder into your ribs. "Sign it, Jade," she hissed. Her voice was like a blade wrapped in silk. "The deed to your Wacker Drive penthouse. It's the only wedding gift suitable for your sister. Consider it repayment for the trouble you've caused us." I looked at the papers. They wanted my home. The $3 million property I had spent every waking hour of my 20s earning. I looked at my father, who just nodded coldly, and then at Chloe, who had a smirk so sharp it could draw blood. I whispered 2 words. "No way." The silence that followed was heavy, like the air before a tornado. My mother didn't argue. She didn't plead. She reached out and struck me across the face with such calculated fury that I felt my jaw click. My gold hoop earring ripped from my ear, bouncing off the marble floor with a sound that felt like a gunshot in the silent room. The guests gasped, the cameras frozen. But my mother just smoothed her dress and leaned into the microphone. "Jade is just overwhelmed with emotion," she told the crowd, her eyes promising me a slow social death. "Hold on. Before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a strange, cold clarity wash over me. I knelt down, picked up my earring, and looked my mother dead in the eyes. I realized then that they didn't just want my apartment. They were broke, and they were using my sister's wedding as a front to rob me blind. I walked off that stage, straight past the security guards, and pulled out my phone. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I called a private number that hadn't been dialed in 3 years. The number of the woman my parents told the world had passed away in a private sanitarium 2 years ago. "Nana?" I whispered, my voice shaking as I reached the parking valet. They did it. They finally crossed the line. It's time to show them who actually owns this legacy. The voice on the other end was raspy, sharp, and sounded like a queen reclaiming her throne. "I'm already in the car, Jade. Tell the driver to go to the service entrance. We're about to crash a wedding." But as I waited for her, a black SUV pulled up, and it wasn't Nana. It was my father's head of security, and he wasn't there to open my door. He was there to make sure I didn't leave the premises until those papers were signed. The security guard, a man named Miller who had been on my father's payroll since I was in diapers, didn't move. He stood between me and the exit, his shadow stretching long across the damp pavement of the valet circle. "Your father wants you back inside, Jade," Miller said, his voice devoid of any warmth. "He says the family discussion isn't over. Don't make this difficult. It's your sister's big day." It stopped being a wedding the moment my mother put her hands on me. I spat, the side of my face still throbbing with a dull, rhythmic heat. "Move, Miller, or I'll add kidnapping to the list of charges I'm filing tonight." He didn't budge. My father had always been a master of polite coercion. In the elite circles of Chicago real estate, you don't use a club, you use a contract and a man in a suit. But they forgot one thing. I was a designer. I knew how to look at a structure and find the one load-bearing wall that, if pulled, would bring the entire house of cards down. Inside the ballroom, I could hear the muffled cheers. They were probably cutting the cake now. My sister Chloe would be smiling for the cameras, pretending her $3 million wedding gift, my home, was already hers. My parents had spent my entire life grooming Chloe to be the socialite, the face of the family, while I was the workhorse they bled dry. Jade! I turned. My father was walking toward the exit, his face a mask of practiced concern for the guests watching through the glass doors, but his eyes were twin shards of ice. He reached out, grabbing my arm with a grip that left bruises. "You are going back in there," he hissed. "You will apologize to your mother. You will sign those documents. We are facing a liquidity crisis, and that penthouse is the collateral we need to save the firm. If you don't, I will personally see to it that you never work as an architect in this city again. I'll blackball you before the sun rises." I looked at him. This man who was supposed to protect me. And I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. "The firm is failing because you spent 30 years living a lie, Dad. You didn't build this empire. Nana did." His face turned a sickly shade of gray. "Your grandmother is... she's not fit to make decisions. She's gone, Jade, legally and mentally." "Is she?" I whispered. Just then, the roar of a vintage Rolls-Royce engine echoed through the parking garage. A sleek silver Phantom pulled up, its headlights blinding my father. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was 80 years old, draped in emerald silk, carrying a cane topped with a silver wolf's head. It was Evelyn, my grandmother. The woman my father had told the board of directors was suffering from advanced dementia and had been moved to a quiet facility in Switzerland. The look on my father's face wasn't just shock. It was pure, unadulterated terror. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, because to him she was supposed to be one. "Arthur," Nana said, her voice cutting through the humid Chicago night like a guillotine. "I hear you're trying to give away my granddaughter's property. That's a bold move for a man who doesn't even own the shoes he's standing in." "Mother, how are you here?" my father stammered, his grip on my arm finally loosening. "Jade didn't just call me, Arthur. She's been visiting me every week for the last year. While you were busy forging my signature on medical releases, she was helping me move my assets into a private trust, a trust that you no longer have access to." Nana turned to me and winked, but her eyes quickly went back to the ballroom doors. "Now, shall we go inside? I believe I have a toast to give at my granddaughter's wedding, and I think the mayor would be very interested to hear where the pension fund money actually went." But as we turned to enter, my mother stepped out of the ballroom, her face contorted in a sneer. She wasn't afraid. She held up her phone, showing a live feed of the ballroom. "Go ahead, walk in," my mother laughed. "The police are already on their way. I called them 5 minutes ago. I told them Jade attacked me on stage and stole the family jewels. By the time you say a word, she'll be in handcuffs, and I'll have power of attorney over both of you." My mother stood there, silhouetted by the opulent gold leaf of the ballroom doors, holding her phone like a detonator. She looked at Nana, then at me, and let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Power of attorney?" Nana's voice didn't waver. She stood taller, her emerald silk shimmering under the valet lights. "Victoria, you were always better at spending money than understanding how it's made. You think a phone call to a precinct commander you have brunch with is going to save you?" "It's already done," my mother snapped. "The insane grandmother and the violent daughter. The headlines write themselves. Chloe is the victim here. You're ruining her wedding with your greed." The irony was sickening. They were trying to steal my home to cover their debts, yet I was the greedy one. My father was pacing now, looking back and forth between his wife and his mother. He knew the truth. He knew Nana wasn't just back. She was the one who held the keys to the entire family chest. "Miller!" my father barked at the security guard. "Block the entrance. Nobody goes in, especially not them." But Miller didn't move. He looked at Nana, then back at my father, and slowly stepped aside. "Sorry, Mr. Sterling," Miller muttered, looking at the floor. "Mrs. Sterling Sr. She's the one who signed my pension agreement 10 years ago. I know who the boss is." My mother's face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. "You're fired! You're all fired!" she screamed, her polished socialite mask finally cracking into 1,000 pieces. Nana didn't even look at her. She took my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for an 80-year-old woman. "Jade, honey, hold your head up. You're an architect. You build things that last. These people, they're just sand." We pushed past my parents and walked back into the ballroom. The music was playing a soft jazz standard. The guests were whispering, their eyes darting toward the red mark on my cheek. Chloe was center stage, holding a glass of champagne, pretending to be the Princess of Chicago. When she saw us, specifically when she saw Nana, the glass slipped from her hand. It shattered against the marble, spraying expensive bubbles over her white silk shoes. "Grandma?" Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "But Mom said you were in a specialized facility. She said you didn't recognize anyone." "Oh, I recognize everyone perfectly, Chloe," Nana said, her voice amplified by the sudden hush that fell over the room. "I recognize a thief when I see one, and I see several standing on this stage." The mayor, sitting at table 1, leaned forward. The city's elite went silent. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was a public execution. Nana walked toward the microphone at the front of the room. My mother tried to rush past us to stop her, but I stepped in her way. I didn't push her. I didn't touch her. I just stood my ground. A wall of pure, unyielding architectural steel. "Stay back, Mom," I said quietly. "You wanted a show. Now you're going to watch the finale." Nana tapped the microphone. The feedback echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her eyes scanning the room with the authority of a queen. "I apologize for the interruption. My son and daughter-in-law seem to have told you I was unwell. As you can see, I am quite vibrant. However, I have a wedding gift for the bride that simply cannot wait." She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a flash drive. She handed it to the technician running the slideshow of happy family memories behind the stage. "Go ahead, dear," Nana said to the tech. "Show them the real family business." The screen flickered. Instead of photos of Chloe as a child, a document appeared. It was a bank statement. A bank statement showing a zero balance in the Sterling Family Trust, and a series of wire transfers to an offshore account in my mother's maiden name. But that wasn't the kicker. The next slide was an audio file. Nana pressed a button on a remote, and the entire ballroom heard my mother's voice, recorded just 1 hour ago in the bridal suite. "Just slap the girl and make her sign, Arthur. If we don't get that penthouse deed tonight, the auditors will see the $10 million we moved from the charity fund. Jade is a martyr. She'll give it up to save our reputation." The room went deathly silent. My sister looked like she was going to faint. My mother looked for an exit, but the police, the ones she had called, were just walking through the front doors. But as the officers approached the stage, my father did something no one expected. He grabbed the flash drive and tried to swallow it. The sight was as pathetic as it was desperate. My father, the titan of Chicago real estate, choking on a piece of plastic in front of the city's most influential power players. 2 police officers rushed forward, not to arrest me, but to perform the Heimlich maneuver on the man who had just tried to swallow the evidence of his own ruin. The flash drive skittered across the stage floor, landing right at my feet. I picked it up, wiped it off, and handed it back to the technician. "Play the next file," I said, my voice steady. The audio continued. It wasn't just my mother anymore. It was a recording of a meeting from 3 months ago. My father's voice, clear as a bell, discussing how they would liquidate Nana's remaining private holdings while she was drugged in that facility. "She's a vegetable, Victoria," my father's voice echoed through the ballroom. "The doctors say she won't last the year. We take the Wacker Drive property from Jade, sell it to the O'Malley Group, and use the cash to plug the hole in the pension fund. By the time anyone notices, the old lady will be buried, and we'll be heroes for saving the company." The mayor stood up and walked out without a word. The developers followed, The silence that replaced the music was heavier than any scream. Chloe was sobbing now, her mascara running down her face, ruining the perfect wedding she had sacrificed her sister for. You recorded us," my mother shrieked, looking at Nana. "You stayed in that place and recorded us?" "I didn't have to stay," Nana said, stepping off the stage with more grace than a woman half her age. "Jade got me out months ago. I've been living in her penthouse, the one you tried to steal, while we gathered every single receipt of your incompetence. You thought I was senile because I stopped arguing with you. I stopped arguing because I started winning." The lead officer, a veteran sergeant who clearly had no patience for socialite drama, stepped toward my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, we're going to need you to come with us. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding the misappropriation of the Sterling Employee Pension Fund." "Wait!" my mother yelled, pointing at me. "She hit me. Look at my face. She's the one who started the violence." The officer looked at my mother's pristine, Botox-smoothed face. Then he looked at me. My cheek was swollen, a dark purple bruise forming where her hand had connected. My ear was still bleeding slightly where the earring had been ripped away. "Ma'am," the officer said to my mother, "the only person who looks like they've been assaulted here is your daughter, and we have 300 witnesses who saw you strike her on that stage." As the handcuffs clicked into place, the sound echoing through the cavernous room, my sister Chloe threw her bouquet at me. "You ruined everything, Jade. This was my night. You're so selfish." I caught the flowers midair and looked at the sister I had spent 20 years protecting. "No, Chloe. I didn't ruin your night. I saved you from becoming exactly like them. You're broke. The wedding is unpaid for. The catering, the dress, the flowers, it was all bought with stolen money. Money that I'm personally returning to the employees tomorrow." My parents were led out in front of the cameras they had invited to document their glory. The flashbulbs weren't for a wedding anymore. They were for a perp walk. Nana put her arm around me. "Let's go, Jade. This place smells like desperation." We walked toward the exit, but as we reached the heavy oak doors, a man in a dark suit blocked our path. He wasn't a cop. He was the lead investigator for the state attorney's office, and he didn't look happy. "Ms. Sterling," he said, looking at me, "I need you to come to the station. Now. There's something on that flash drive even your grandmother didn't know about. Something your father did 10 years ago that changes everything about who actually owns your penthouse." The investigator's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Nana looked at him, her brow furrowing for the first time that night. "What are you talking about? I built that firm. I bought the land for that penthouse myself." The investigator, a man named Miller, no relation to our security guard, opened a leather file. "You did, Mrs. Sterling. But 10 years ago, when Jade was just 17, your son forged a series of quitclaim deeds. He didn't just try to steal it tonight. He's been using Jade's name to shield a massive offshore laundering operation for a decade. Jade, legally, you don't just own a penthouse. You technically own the entire Sterling Plaza downtown, but you also own the $40 million debt attached to it." I felt the room spin. My parents hadn't just slapped me. They had buried me under a mountain of their own crimes before I was even an adult. They hadn't wanted my home. They wanted me to take the fall when the house of cards finally collapsed. "Not today," I whispered, looking at the investigator. "I'm an architect. I know how to fix a foundation." I turned back to the ballroom. My sister was sitting on the floor, surrounded by wilted lilies and broken glass. My parents were being shoved into the back of a squad car. The elite of Chicago were scurrying for the exits like rats off a sinking ship. "Nana," I said, my voice resonating with a strength I didn't know I possessed. "We aren't going to the station to hide. We're going there to turn over the encrypted files I found in Dad's safe 3 weeks ago. The ones he thought I was too emotional to understand." The investigator's eyebrows shot up. "You have the encrypted ledger?" "I'm a senior designer detective," I said with a cold smirk. "I spend all day looking at blueprints and hidden structures. You think I couldn't find a false floor in my own father's study? The drive to the precinct was the quietest 30 minutes of my life. Beside me, Nana held my hand, her silver wolf's head cane resting against her knees. She didn't say a word until we pulled up to the curb. "Jade," she whispered, "you're the only Sterling left with a soul. Don't let them take that too." Inside, the confrontation was legendary. My mother was screaming about her rights, while my father sat in an interrogation room, his head in his hands. When I walked past the glass, he looked up. For a second, I saw a flicker of the father who used to carry me on his shoulders. Then, he looked at my bruised face and looked away. He knew it was over. I spent 6 hours with the state attorney. By 4:00 a.m., the truth was out. Because my father had forged my signature when I was a minor, the debts were legally null and void. But because I had been the one to bring the evidence forward, the whistleblower laws protected the assets Nana had reclaimed. I didn't just keep my penthouse. By sunrise, I was the majority shareholder of Sterling Development. As I walked out of the precinct into the crisp morning air, the sun was hitting the glass of the skyscrapers I loved so much. I saw Chloe standing by a taxi, her wedding dress dirty and torn at the hem. She looked at me, waiting for me to offer her a ride, a check, a way out. I walked right past her, "The penthouse is being sold, Chloe," I said, not slowing down. "The proceeds are going to the pension fund. I'm moving into Nana's old estate. If you want a place to stay, I hear there's an opening for a junior receptionist at my new firm. You'll have to interview like everyone else." I got into the car with Nana, and for the first time in my life, the weight on my shoulders was gone. My parents thought they could break me with a slap and a contract. Instead, they gave me the keys to the kingdom. The moral of the story? Never mistake a woman's silence for weakness. Sometimes she's just waiting for the perfect moment to tear your house down. If you enjoyed this story of justice and the ultimate family takedown, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who loves a good revenge story. And don't forget to subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab for more incredible stories every week. Thanks for watching.